Hello, welcome to the channel. Subscribe, leave a like, and don't forget to write a comment. Enjoy watching.
I used to think I'd cry at graduation, maybe from joy, maybe relief, maybe that strange, chest-cracking feeling you get when something finally ends and you realize no one clapped just for you. But that morning, standing under the two white lights of the high school auditorium, blinking through the haze of hairspray and proud moms fanning themselves with printed programs, I didn't cry. I stood there in my valedictorian robe, freshly pressed like it mattered to anyone but me, clutching a folder that held my speech, and realized every seat in my row was filled, except mine. And every seat around it was filled, except the three I had marked weeks ago with my mom's curly handwriting on the RSVP form, Janice Whitaker +2. I was early, of course. I always was. The last time I'd been late to anything was in 8th grade, when I missed the bus, and my dad told me it was a you problem. I still made it on time that day, sprinting like a lunatic and sweating through my backpack while Emily got driven to school because she just needed 10 more minutes for her hair. It didn't take long to figure out they weren't in traffic. They just weren't coming. I sat down in the front row like the faculty had instructed, straight-backed, knees tight, palms sweating just enough to dampen the edges of my index cards. The principal waved from the podium, a few teachers gave me thumbs up, and one of them mouthed, "You did it, kiddo," like he was trying to make up for something someone else forgot. The chatter behind me was a waterfall of pride and perfume. I could hear people laughing, parents hugging their kids, someone yelling across the aisle, "We're so proud of you, baby girl." And I was sitting like a damn centerpiece at a table no one came to. I kept turning my head like they might walk in late, maybe carrying one of those ridiculous flower bouquets from the grocery store. Maybe they'd be breathless, flustered, mouthing sorry, like sitcom parents who got caught up in traffic or a mix-up with the GPS. But no. 10 minutes passed. Then 15. And somewhere between the chorus performance and the school counselor's speech about the journey ahead, I stopped pretending. I wasn't surprised. That's the worst part. You ever look back and realize the signs were always there? That you've been piecing together a puzzle your whole damn life, only you didn't realize it was a picture of yourself sitting alone? I remembered the science fair in 5th grade. I built a miniature ecosystem, stayed up 3 nights researching nitrogen cycles, even made my own labels by hand. Emily hot-glued some fake flowers to a foam board and called it springtime vibes. Guess who got a new bike? Then there was the time I made honor roll 3 semesters in a row, and my mom didn't even hang the certificate. Said something like, "Well, that's just expected of you." But when Emily managed to pull AC in algebra, we went out for ice cream like she'd cured cancer. The laughter from the crowd was getting louder. Someone dropped a balloon. Flashbulbs kept going off behind me. I sat there thinking about how even now, they'd find a way to explain it. Maybe they'd say they didn't know where to park. Or that they had to take Emily to something important. But this was important. This was mine. A voice whispered from my left, Caroline, my lab partner from last year, leaned in and asked quietly, "Hey, are your folks coming?" And I smiled the kind of smile you give someone when you're trying not to vomit or cry, a tight, too polished thing that feels like pulling skin over broken teeth. I shrugged. "Probably stuck at the salon," I joked, and she laughed, not knowing I meant it. And then right then, my phone buzzed in my lap. Just once. One small, heartless notification. It was a message from my friend Dana. All it said was, "Hey, you okay?" I turned slightly, confused, and she was standing a few rows behind me in the upper seats, waving gently. Then she made a face, half horror, half "you need to see this." My stomach dropped. She held up her phone, angling the screen toward me like she was breaking bad news. And there it was. A photo. Freshly posted. Time-stamped exactly 20 minutes ago. My mom and dad, sitting next to Emily, wrapped in spa robes. Smiling, eyes closed, holding up champagne flutes. The caption read, "Self-Care Sunday with our star girl before she heads to NYC. So proud of our Emmy." My hands went cold. My ears buzzed like someone had turned on a radio full of static. It was like the entire room, the crowd, the music, the speeches, dropped out of existence, and all I could hear was that high-pitched nothing. Like a TV that had lost signal. And then I read the caption again. Our star girl. Not me. Never me. The principal was stepping up to the microphone. Someone behind me whispered, "Valedictorian's up next." The clapping started, polite and low. The spotlight moved. And I was still staring at the screen. I stood slowly, cards clenched in my fist. My heart was pounding like it wanted to break free of my chest and run out of the building. I walked to the podium one step at a time, teeth clenched, the corners of my vision still vibrating with rage and disbelief. I didn't look at the audience. I didn't look at the empty seats. I just looked straight ahead. And in that moment, I knew I wasn't giving the speech I had written. Not anymore. Not for them. Not for anyone but me. There's a special kind of pain that doesn't come from screaming or slamming doors, not even from being slapped with cruel words. It's the quiet kind. The kind that wraps around your lungs and steals your breath, while everyone else keeps clapping like the world is still spinning just fine. That was me, walking toward the podium in that auditorium, clutching my valedictorian speech with shaking fingers, my heart pumping acid through my veins while a photo of my family's perfect little spa day burned itself into my mind like it had been carved there with a hot knife. I wasn't even surprised anymore. I was just done pretending that their absence was ever about circumstance and not choice. Standing at the side of the stage, waiting for the assistant principal to finish fumbling through the list of academic awards, I unfolded the little white cards I had prepared for weeks. Each one had my carefully written notes, smudged now by my palm sweat, thanking my teachers, thanking the school, thanking my parents. I looked at the last card, the one that said, "To Mom and Dad, thank you for always believing in me," and I swear I almost laughed. The kind of laugh that turns into a sob if you let it escape your throat. But I didn't let it. I took a deep breath and pulled out a pen from my pocket like I was crossing out the names of dead enemies in a war journal. I drew a thick black line right through that sentence. Then I scratched through the word support, replaced it with survival, and underlined the words "I did this alone" like they were gospel. All around me, the crowd was buzzing, people leaning over to whisper and clap as names were called. Somewhere behind me, a dad was yelling out, "That's my boy," while someone else blew a damn party horn. And here I was, erasing my parents from the biggest moment of my life like they were a clerical error. Which, come to think of it, they kind of were. The assistant principal finally finished, and it was my turn to speak. The announcer's voice rang out, "Please welcome our valedictorian, Mara Whitaker," and there was a polite burst of applause, the kind people give out of habit more than excitement. I stepped up to the mic, my shoes clicking against the stage floor, my throat dry like I'd swallowed gravel. I glanced down at the audience out of instinct, scanning faces I didn't know, looking for the two that were never going to be there. Except suddenly, one of them was my mother. She was slipping into the back row like a damn afterthought, like this was a dentist appointment she'd nearly forgotten about. Her hair was damp, like she'd just stepped out of a sauna, and she was wearing sunglasses indoors, like she thought no one would notice she was late. But I noticed. Oh, I noticed everything. She was holding her phone in her hand, probably still scrolling through comments on Emily's post. Because God forbid she missed a like on her precious daughter's spa selfie to catch her firstborn speaking as the best damn student in the entire graduating class. She looked up. We locked eyes. And in that moment, something inside me didn't just crack, it shattered and reassembled into something new, something colder, sharper, and a hell of a lot less forgiving. I cleared my throat and looked down at my newly marked up speech. My hands were still shaking, but now it wasn't nerves. It was adrenaline, rage, clarity, whatever you want to call it. It felt like purpose. Like power. I had 2 AP classes, I began, my voice steady and calm in the microphone, even though my blood was boiling. That's almost 8 credits, which puts me ahead before I even start college. I saw a few heads nod approvingly. Let them believe I was still the good, polite girl. For now. I paused and glanced back up at the crowd, catching my mother lowering herself into her seat like she was trying not to disturb anyone. She hadn't clapped. She hadn't even smiled. She was there, but not for me. She was there to say she'd been there, later. And that was almost worse. I looked back down at the speech and skipped 3 whole cards ahead. I didn't need to say any of the pretty things I'd planned. I didn't owe this audience, or my mother, any performance of gratitude. I wasn't a dancing monkey. I wasn't here to make her feel better for being an afterthought in her own daughter's life. I gripped the podium tighter and leaned into the microphone again. And through every late night, I said, my eyes flicking to hers with pinpoint precision, every group project I carried, every test I studied for alone, every morning I walked out the door without a ride, without a hug, without so much as a good luck, I realized something. My voice didn't shake. My hands stopped trembling. For the first time that day, I felt calm. I realized that sometimes being ignored is a gift. Because when nobody shows up for you, you stop needing them to. A wave of silence rippled through the room. You could hear the AC kick on and the squeak of someone shifting in their chair. In the back row, my mother had frozen. Her sunglasses were still on. Her arms were folded tightly across her chest. I smiled. Not a big, stagey smile, just a little curl of the mouth. Enough to say, I see you. I always have. And now you see me too. And then I turned the page. Because I wasn't done yet. Not even close. There's a strange kind of silence that creeps into a room when someone tells the truth too bluntly, without decoration, without apology, just drops it like a glass on a hard floor and lets the pieces scatter wherever they want. That was the silence hanging in the auditorium now, so thick it swallowed up even the air between the rows. I stood at the podium, blinking into a sea of faces that had gone from smiling and chatty to confused and stiff, like they couldn't quite decide if they'd just heard something brave or something uncomfortable. Some of them glanced around nervously, probably wondering if they'd missed the joke or if maybe I was having some kind of breakdown. But I wasn't. I had never been clearer in my life. My speech wasn't angry. It wasn't even bitter. It was clean and careful and sharp, like surgical steel. I cut with a smile, and I didn't raise my voice once. I didn't have to. I want to talk about what it means, I said, pacing my words slowly, letting the weight of them land like quiet footsteps in a cathedral, to succeed without a safety net. To earn something that no one thought to give you. Not because they couldn't, but because they didn't even see you trying. The faculty behind me shifted in their chairs, and I could hear someone clear their throat like they were trying to reset the room's tone, bring it back to the usual rhythm of warm, fuzzy speeches about the future and possibility and family. But I wasn't giving them a Pinterest quote or a fake thank you to people who hadn't earned it. I was giving them the truth. Some people have cheerleaders, I continued, looking up again and scanning the rows, making sure to never look directly at my mother who was still sitting stiffly in the back like she'd accidentally walked into a funeral. Some people have parents who show up to every game, who buy extra tassels for their honor cords, who cry happy tears just because they're proud to be proud. And then some people, I paused, letting the words hang in the air like bait, some people have to clap for themselves. A few murmurs stirred through the crowd, a kind of ripple of discomfort that let me know it was working. Good. Let them squirm a little. Let them think about what it means to raise a kid who doesn't expect applause because they've never heard it from the people who were supposed to give it first. I flipped to the last card slowly. I had rewritten it only 15 minutes earlier in my seat with a borrowed pen and a lifetime of practice swallowing feelings whole. My achievements, I said, each word like a stone placed deliberately, are not because someone lifted me. They're because I climbed. I built my own ladder when no one noticed I was still on the ground. And I don't say this for sympathy. I say it for the others sitting here today who also clapped for themselves when no one else did. That's when I looked right at her. My mother. She had taken off her sunglasses at some point, probably to gauge whether my words were going to ruin the family name or just bruise it lightly. But the way her lips pressed together, that slight twitch in her jaw, yeah, I knew I'd hit something real. Good. Some of us, I said, locking eyes with her so there was no mistake about the target, were taught not how to lean on others, but how to stand alone. And for that, I want to say thank you. A pause, just long enough for the tension to swell. Then I said it, soft and level, thank you for teaching me to stand alone. The room was silent. Not stunned into awe, more like paralyzed by confusion. They didn't know whether to clap or wait to see if there was more. It was the kind of stillness that only happens when people hear something they weren't ready for, something that doesn't fit the script they thought they'd walked into. And then she stood up. My mother, Janice Whitaker, queen of the Facebook photo album and passive-aggressive silence, stood up slowly, with the precision of someone deciding whether to storm out or vanish quietly. Her heels clicked against the floor like a metronome of finality, and she didn't look at me as she walked up the aisle. Didn't glance left or right. Just left. Gone. A few heads turned to follow her. A few people whispered. But I didn't move. I just stood there, calm and full, not empty like before. Because this was mine. This speech, this moment, this goddamn truth. All of it was mine, and no one could take it from me. And then I did something I hadn't planned. I smiled. Not the polite, people-pleasing kind of smile I'd worn my whole life. Not the forced, see I'm fine kind. This was different. This was the kind of smile that comes from finally choosing yourself over someone who never did. This was the kind of smile that doesn't need permission. I looked down at my speech one last time, folded the cards in half, and slid them into my pocket. That's when I noticed my father. He was sitting 6 rows back, just off center. I hadn't seen him walk in. He didn't clap. He didn't even look up from his phone. Just sat there, thumbing through whatever was more important: baseball scores, emails, a photo Emily had probably just sent from some lobby, maybe another champagne shot. And you know what? I didn't feel a damn thing. Because at that point, I knew exactly where I stood. Alone. By design. Not because they left me behind, but because I had finally stopped waiting for them to catch up. And I was just getting started. It was a full week later when my phone buzzed with a message that felt like it was written by someone who'd read about guilt in a magazine but had never felt it for real. It was from my mom, of course, short and weirdly cheerful, like nothing had happened. Family dinner Sunday at 6. Your favorite cake. Hope you can come. No apology, no acknowledgement. Just a reset button slammed with all the subtlety of a car crash. I stared at the text for a full 5 minutes before deciding that yes, I would come, because sometimes showing up is the best way to make someone uncomfortable. The drive to their house felt longer than usual, even though it was the same 22 minutes I'd taken 100 times before. My hands gripped the steering wheel tighter than they needed to, but I kept my face calm. I had already done the crying part alone, like always, after the ceremony, when I got back to my apartment and sat on the edge of my bed still in my gown, staring at a diploma that might as well have been a tombstone for whatever hope I had left about my family. So now I was clear-headed. Not angry. Just exact. The front door was already open when I got there, like they were too eager to pretend everything was fine. The house smelled like roast chicken, candles, and something overly sweet, probably that damn cake. My mom appeared in the doorway wearing her best "everything's okay" smile, the one she usually saved for church fundraisers and neighborhood gossip. She kissed the air near my cheek and said, "You look tired, sweetie," which in her language meant, "You look like a problem I don't want to solve." Inside, my dad was setting the table like he hadn't ignored my entire speech with his face buried in ESPN. He gave me a nod, the kind that men like him think counts as emotional labor. Emily was already sitting, glowing like a Christmas ornament, her freshly manicured nails tapping the glass of iced tea in a rhythm that matched her endless monologue about college auditions, how stressful it was finding the right headshot photographer, how she needed a new pair of heels for her dance callback. No one asked me about my speech. No one even mentioned graduation. It was like the last week had been wiped from their memories, replaced with one of those cheap sitcom laugh tracks. So I sat. I smiled politely. I nodded in the right places. And then, Just after the plates were cleared and the cake was about to be served, I said, "Actually, I brought something for everyone." The silence that followed was immediate, almost reverent. My mom paused with the knife halfway into the cake, and my dad actually looked up from his phone. Emily blinked like she hadn't realized I still had vocal cords. I reached into my bag and pulled out 4 small boxes, wrapped in plain paper with no ribbons or bows. I handed one to each of them slowly, deliberately, giving them no reason to suspect anything more than late graduation gifts. They opened them in unison. Inside each box was a photo frame, simple but solid, holding an image that looked, at first glance, completely normal. It was me at the podium in full graduation regalia, speaking into the mic. Except I had edited the background, removing every trace of the audience. No parents. No students. Just me on a stage, alone. Above the image, printed in elegant black script, were the words, "Just me." As always. Emily let out a tiny gasp like she'd just been slapped with a wet napkin. My mom froze, still holding the box, the muscles in her jaw twitching like a clock winding up to explode. My dad looked at his, then at me, then back at the photo, as if trying to decipher the hidden message in what was clearly screaming at full volume. I leaned back in my chair and crossed my arms gently, my voice calm. "I just thought it'd be nice to remember the moment. Since, you weren't really there." Emily's eyes welled up immediately, tears clinging to her lashes like they were auditioning too. "You don't have to be so mean," she whispered, her voice cracking like a piece of cheap glass. "Mean?" I said, smiling just a little. "Emily, this is the nicest thing I've ever done. I'm giving you honesty. It's the one thing no one else in this house seems to hand out." My mom put her box down on the table with a sharp thud. "We said we were sorry," she snapped, though in fact no one had said anything even close to sorry. "You're making something out of nothing." I stood up slowly, pushing my chair back with a quiet screech of old wood on tile. I walked over to the cake, looked at it, a fluffy, sugary thing with pink flowers and a banner that said, "We love you, Mara." Like it was a band-aid for a bullet wound, and carefully sliced myself a small piece. Then I picked up the dessert plate and placed it gently back on the table, untouched. Just cake. No bite. On the napkin next to it, I left a little note I'd written ahead of time, folded in half. My mom picked it up as I reached the front door. She read it out loud, her voice flat. "Sweet things shouldn't be wasted on sour people." And then I left. Not fast. Not with a slam. Just with this same quiet they'd given me all my life. The difference now was, I wasn't taking it lying down anymore. By the time the leaves started to turn orange and die where they stood, I was already 3 months into college and living in a town where nobody knew my sister's Instagram handle or my mom's passive-aggressive holiday newsletters. I had a twin bed, a used desk that smelled faintly of pencil shavings and desperation, and the smallest slice of peace I'd ever tasted. Most days, I woke up early not because I had to, but because it was quiet and mine. No one was yelling from the kitchen about Emily's SAT tutor or asking if I could pick up her dry cleaning, since I was going that way anyway. In this tiny shoebox of a dorm room, I could finally hear myself think. And sometimes, what I thought wasn't pretty, but it was honest. My parents emailed twice in the first week. Just a casual, "Hope you're settling in," from my mom with way too many exclamation points, followed by a blurry picture of our cat that I hadn't seen in months. My dad sent one that said, "Let us know if you need anything," but the body of the email was completely blank, like even that offer was a copy-paste job he couldn't be bothered to complete. I didn't respond. Not because I was trying to punish them, though part of me probably was, but because I didn't know what I'd even say. "Thanks for pretending I matter now that you're uncomfortable." "Sorry, I was too busy enjoying the sound of your absence." Yeah, none of it felt right, and I had no interest in doing emotional labor just so they could sleep at night. I stayed quiet, but I wasn't idle. In one of my creative writing classes, we were assigned a personal essay. Something real, something close to the bone. And at first, I rolled my eyes because what could I say that I hadn't already screamed into the void in 1,000 unsent texts or draft tweets I deleted before hitting post? But then I remembered the speech. Not the one I gave, sharp and surgical, but the one I wanted to give. The one I wrote weeks before graduation, the one I'd folded neatly and hidden in the back of a notebook like a love letter to a family that never showed up to read it. So I opened my laptop and typed it out word for word. It started with "to my parents" and ended with "I love you." Every line in between was full of grace they never earned, lines about sacrifice and gratitude, about learning from their strength, about wanting to make them proud. It was the kind of speech that would have made people cry for the right reasons. The kind that makes guidance counselors quote you on the school website. The kind I knew I could have given if the people it was meant for had actually bothered to show up. But now, I gave it to the internet instead. I published it on my blog. Not under my name, not tagged, no dramatic "read this, Mom and Dad" at the top. Just a clean post titled, "The Speech I Never Gave." I didn't expect much. A few classmates read it. One professor left a comment that said it was brutally beautiful. I went to bed that night thinking nothing of it. When I woke up, it had 30,000 shares. By lunchtime, BuzzFeed had embedded it in a feel-good roundup of things that made us cry this week, sandwiched between a video of a soldier surprising his dog and some dad giving away his daughter at a wedding in a wheelchair. My blog's inbox exploded. Strangers were writing me stories of their own. The valedictorian whose dad missed every recital, the oldest daughter who babysat her siblings while her mom bragged about the youngest's piano trophies. People said thank you. They said they felt seen. And then came the email from my mother. It was longer this time. She must have taken her time with it, carefully written, full of phrases like "we had no idea" and "we're sorry you felt that way." She even used the phrase "your truth," which made me laugh out loud, because my mother had never used that phrase in her entire life until the internet told her it was trendy to do so. She ended the message with something about wanting to visit the campus, maybe bring Emily, maybe we could all get dinner. I didn't reply. Instead, I printed out her email, drew a thick red line through the sentence that said "we're proud of you," and taped it next to my bed. Not out of bitterness, but as a reminder, pride means nothing when it shows up late, empty-handed, and only because the crowd started cheering. And then I recorded myself reading the real speech. My voice was softer than the one I used at graduation, warmer, almost trembling in a few spots where the honesty rubbed too raw against old wounds. I uploaded the audio to the blog and titled it "The Final Edit." No flair, no sound effects, just me and a microphone and the sound of a girl finally saying what she needed to say, not to the people who failed her, but to the people like her who thought they were alone. It climbed to the top of Reddit's front page that week. People started calling me Valedictorian Girl like it was a brand. A few offered to turn the post into a short film. Someone emailed asking if I'd write a book. I said maybe. I said we'll see. And when I lay in bed that night, headphones on, the lights low, I played the audio file back just once. At the end of it, I heard myself say the words I didn't get to say out loud before. They still don't get it. But I do. And that's enough. The screen fades there. The audio cuts out slowly, gently, like a breath being released after being held for too many years. And maybe you're wondering, was that strength? Or was it just a wall I built too high? Maybe it's both. But at least now, I'm the one holding the pen.